Hi, this is DaQuavion.
I'm Brian.
I'm Marsha.
And we're
Simply
Neighbors.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Brian and Marsha. I'm glad that you guys are here with us. Stephanie and Donovan and Evangeline won't be with us on this episode, but I'll be here in their stead. And so thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you.
And so let's just get started by just way of introductions. Like, who are you all? What's your name? Where you're from? How did you get to the neighborhood?
Okay. Well, I'm Brian, and I'm an attorney. I've been with the current firm I'm with in Cleveland to be 24 years next month. I do a lot of work. We represent injury victims from auto accidents, workers' compensation, medical malpractice, that sort of thing. So I enjoy my work because I feel like I'm helping an individual. When I first started in law, I worked for a corporate law firm, and we were helping one corporation sue another. And they were just shuffling money back and forth, and you didn't really see you were helping anybody concretely. So I really appreciate my job. I also am a student. I'm enrolled in 2 schools. I work full-time, but I'm also enrolled in 2 schools in graduate school, one in theology and one in bioinformatics. And the center of that is bringing my Christian worldview to those disciplines. Mm-hmm. Particularly, I want to use the biology of bioinformatics to complement bioethics, and bioethics to be an expression of how God views the value of human beings and how our ethics needs to reflect that. I love to study. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I'm studying for my classes, it's not like I have to and I'm doing work. It's mm-hmm. like I enjoy it. But I also enjoy going out to restaurants with my wife. Very much. I enjoy cleaning. It's therapeutic for me to do the dishes and laundry.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So those are a couple of the things I enjoy.
Okay, I'm Marsha, and I'm I didn't officially retired, but I'm going to say a recently retired teacher. And I started out teaching. I was in the Peace Corps years ago in Papua New Guinea for 2 years, and then went from there to Lesotho in Southern Africa for 2 years, and then came back to Cleveland. And I've taught in Cleveland. I've also had the opportunity when Cleveland had a layoff in 2011. I went to China, and I taught there for about a year. Spent a summer teaching in Vietnam. So I like different cultures. Teenagers are my favorite people. But also in 2000, when I was teaching, I had my first diagnosis with breast cancer. Mm. And I had another bout in 2003. So I decided to throw myself a birthday party and enjoyed that so much that I established my business. So towards the end, in 2009, I was teaching and had a business, and transitioned that business to floral design after my 3rd bout with cancer. So mm-hmm. That's a little bit about me. What else? I enjoy working with flowers. I believe that part of my own personal mission is to expose people to God's creative beauty. And that can be in terms of aesthetics, but it can also be in terms of experiences, gathering with people, friends, having a good time, hosting events, hospitality. So I enjoy that. I enjoy shopping, getting really nice quality things for discount prices. And it's amazing, like the things I'm able to find. Sometimes I'll say God went shopping with me. Mm. So I enjoy that. I enjoy hanging out with Brian. I enjoy, we go to the movies maybe twice a month. So I enjoy that. And I enjoy just being with, there's a community of people that we meet with from the church. So I enjoy hanging out with them on some Fridays in the month, singing with my family, all those types of things I really enjoy.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys are doing so many things, both like personally as individuals, but also as a couple. And in both of what you guys were saying, I just heard how much like faith is intertwined with the various like work that you do as individuals. And I'm curious, like collectively together, what does that look like? What is those like overlaps and connections have you guys like found with your spaces?
Well, one thing I respect about Marsha, we've been married for just over 10 years, is her dedication to the Lord. And that was one of the things that most attracted me to her before we got married. And that's central to me too. I've been a Christian since I was 18. And, my work and her work, we see it as not just a job, but as a vocation, which means a calling. And so that's one of the advantages of us getting married later in life, is we didn't have to grow so much as individuals after we got together. We kind of knew who we were, we knew our calling, and it was kind of a meshing, together and then growing together. As opposed to us trying to figure ourselves out, individually.
Yeah. And what I hear you is like saying, because Stephanie and I, we have these conversations a lot because but it's like opposite because we got married like younger. And so like we're like figuring it out, but like this idea of interdependence. I think a lot of like young people or just people in general, you get in relationships first time, lots of flowers, lovey-dovey, and sometimes a little bit of codependency, or you're just really, really attached. But I heard you talk about this idea of being interdependent, knowing fully who you are, what you're doing, your gifts, and then coming together, like these things are like naturally meshing more together. Speaking like meshing, like another thing, like people won't be able to like see because they're just listening, but you both are, you said you got married older, but also like you're in a interracial marriage that is a meshing that is very different for a lot of folks. Historically, there's always been like issues in our country racially and things, but being married older, navigating faith, like how has like being married later, being married interracially, how has that I guess like transform impacts the way that you guys work or like even like live out your lives, because that can be a challenge for a lot of people, particularly those who may not really be as strong in knowing like who I am as an individual first.
I mentioned to you my background of having been in the Peace Corps. So it wasn't that I grew up saying, oh, I want to be in the Peace Corps. Literally, one day I saw a commercial and said, oh, let me get an application. And so then that kind of triggered in me the scripture that God will give you the desires of your heart. It was almost like a desire was dropped inside of me. And so then there began to be a love and an appreciation for different cultures. And also, even before I joined the Peace Corps, I remember apartheid in South Africa. I remember going on marches for the U.S. to have sanctions and things like that. So there had been some sense of justice and also love and appreciation for different aspects of culture. And it was interesting that when we got married, it was almost like, okay, God is going to have you walk this out. Like day by day, like living with someone, walking out what you say you believe. And for me, it has not been difficult. One of the things that I can say that has helped it to not be difficult is that I am loved well by Brian. And that doesn't mean that there aren't times, even when we were talking about the podcast today, that doesn't mean that there aren't times when you go, oh, like culturally, you're not supposed to say what when someone calls you. Like when we first got married, I'd say, Brian, he'd say, what? And I'm like, oh no. So I would just be quiet. Because, growing up in our family, you don't respond with what? You say yes. What means you're bothering me, you're being rude, So, there were just small things. No, like, harsh things in terms of transitioning because we're an interracial couple. We do have conversations. We talk about what's happening in our country. We talk about, when things come up that might be a cultural thing. But there hasn't been any hard, like, clashes between us. Thank the Lord. And I'm sure that also has to do with possibly our age and the fear of the Lord. And when I say fear, not cowering, but reverence, wanting to honor the Lord. And for me, really being loved well. Yeah. Being loved well and respected. Yeah.
And I think the way our families are so torn apart and then remodeled and refashioned, I mean, God can use anything. But when we have a sense of God's design for marriage, I think it's more of a permanent thing, and that's something you grow out of or into something else. And I think a vocation can be different things at different times, but I think there has to be a stability there that's consistent with being led by the Holy Spirit.
Ms. Marsha, you do that on a daily, with flowers, with the arrangements, and like through like that as like art and beauty. What has the language of career, calling, vocation look like for you, and how are you using your gifts within the work of your business?
This year, I kind of did a small pilot of showing some students some floral design, how to create floral design. So part of the social mission of my business is to host flowering events for cancer survivors, but I've expanded the business, so I want to do experiences for teens with florals and also social and emotional learning. So even though I'm not in the classroom, I still understand teens. I still understand the need for social and emotional learning. I still am a teacher. That doesn't, go away.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answer. So life, there's layers to it. Yeah. There's layers to that vocation. There's layers to that calling, and things that happen. Just like cancer led me to event planning, and event planning led me to floral design. So, the only thing I knew in the 6th grade was I want to be a teacher. Yeah. But nothing about flowers or anything like that, or nothing about living overseas. So that's kind of a little bit about that.
So what I've heard from both of you all are just really genuine, like, stories of life, of trusting in the Lord, trusting in like this purposeful life, this life that's really like built in abundance. Yeah, I think it's important for people to be able to hear, to know, and recognize that, because it's hard. People are tired. They feel like they can't even get started. And to know that there's people who've gone before them, who's older in age and still doing the things, still going to school, still like living life, not stopping. You guys are like, put in your pitchfork to say, all right, we're going to the suburbs, out in the rural country. You ain't gonna see us. We're going overseas all day. Pension, go ahead, let me spend it. RA, whatever, all the stuff. Like, that wasn't what you guys decided to do. You guys are like in the city. You're in the neighborhood. We haven't really talked a lot about that. I'm curious to.
Well, I have to hit on one thing.
Go ahead.
You said overseas. I have to mention that I spent the entire month of June in Madrid, Spain, studying at Madrid Flower School.
Oh.
I just want to say to people, you never get too old to learn, to have new experiences, new adventures, and just don't believe the lie. Just keep living. You know, I had the opportunity to do the commencement speech for my students this past May that I taught in high school. And the message was, when you live a life of honor, that life keeps getting better, but trouble will come. So there are thorns that Brian has had. I remember you mentioning the blooms and all of that, and thorns that I've had, even since we've been married. Like the first 4 years of marriage, we were in a car accident every year. Year number 3, I think he had a cancer diagnosis. Year number 4, I had my 3rd cancer diagnosis. So we don't want you to think that, you know, it's all been so smooth. But grace has been there, and commitment has been there, and you just keep living, and honestly, life keeps getting better. So I have to say that, you know, that don't give up on learning, don't give up on experiencing the fruitfulness of life, even when difficult things come. You just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a word. I hope people like clip that, write it down, put it on their forehead, and just remember, because we need it. And with, again, just like neighborliness, you guys stayed in the city. Can you just talk about like what really motivated you all to like stay in Cleveland? You didn't go to the suburbs. You didn't say like, hey, we're going to just like stop and just going to be just us two rocking and rolling, keep pressing in. Why stay in Cleveland? Why this neighborhood? Why this home?
Well, we were in my family home, which was on the east side of Cleveland, when we got married. And
Right down the street from the Baldwin Estates and the Morris
from
Black.
Morris Black, not far from that area. So what ended up happening was I was driving in the car, and I glanced over, and I saw a little small brick building, literally, I don't know, 3-minute drive from my house, right on Larchmere, Woodland Larchmere area, tucked between some houses. And I said, oh, that would be so nice. Could be a nice florist studio, and then I could rent the space out, and people could do pop-ups there and all that kind of stuff. So that just came to my mind. And so then we went to check it out. And when we went to check it out, someone had already put, after we checked it out, someone ended up putting a bid on it. So then saw another building, Larchmere area, because that was my family area. So then saw another building, and you had to have, it was a home and it had a storefront. But you had to have, they no longer did the I don't know the word for it, but a combined loan where you could do residential and commercial. Found out they no longer had those. So we didn't have 20% to put down. So then it was like, oh, well, let's just go ahead and get pre-approved. And if we happen to stumble across something, so there was nothing in us that said, it's time for us to buy a building for a business. It's time for us to buy a home. It was just something that was kind of dropped in me. And we started looking at different places. I think 2 other houses before this one. And when we saw this one, it was the windows, the natural light, the big window in the kitchen, the big window in the living room, all the light on the 3rd floor, and the garage had all these built-in shelves so that, the vases, the party stuff, all that could be there.
So you had your business before coming to this home?
Yes. Yeah. So I had my business, We've only been in this home for 4 years and 5 months, something like that. And then I said, if we can't find a place where we can live and I can also work, then if I'm going to be in a basement, I need to be in a basement where I will not be afraid. So, so we have, the basement. It has a restroom downstairs, and it's not a finished basement. But we created a floor studio for me down there. Had the guy paint it, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how we ended up here. It wasn't really. We said, it's time to buy a home. But we both know that we do like the city. I don't think we ever said, we looked at one house in Cleveland Heights, I think. Was that Cleveland Heights? Yeah. We looked at one, but it wasn't like, oh, we want to move to the suburbs. We want to get out of the city. We both like Cleveland. We both, he spent ages 8 to 14 in Venezuela as a child and lived in Iran. So, we both kind of just like the city. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, what a blessing. You talk about, God's gifts and like these things just like happening. What a beautiful space, this home. Well, and then like you said, just being able to be and operate fully, like the built-in shells, the natural lighting. So if you have anything, rather upstairs, like up here, you're able to just like put and like have it in place. So beautiful, so lovely.
Yeah, and neither of us have ever talked seriously about living in the suburbs. That's just we have a heart for the city. Before we were married, I lived in Cleveland for 19 years on the near west side, and just had a heart for the city. I got to work before I went to my law firm. I worked for about 3 years for a nonprofit for the Hispanic community in the city. And I loved it, I was kind of an assistant to the executive director where I did everything from, taking dictation to translating to doing the taxes for the organization. But God had instilled in me years ago a desire for the city and for people who, and some people in the city can't categorize city dwellers as in a blanket way. But there's a lot more disadvantage economically and socially in many parts of cities, including Cleveland, I think. And I have a heart for that. I have a heart for the people that live here. I still have that burden. I don't really, it doesn't really manifest itself through a lot of social service for me because I just don't have the time. But one thing I'm kind of an academic person, and one thing I'd love to do is just to talk from a theoretical standpoint. How do we solve, not just from a religious standpoint, but from a public policy standpoint, how do we address poverty? How do we address it from not just a political perspective, but also a social perspective, I'd love someday to have enough time to sit down and think. And of course, me being a Christian, I looked at the scriptures and the Old Testament. The refrain is repeated over and over that God is a God of justice and righteousness. So what does justice look like for the kid living in the project, What is justice for the 15-year-old mother? What is justice for these people, and how do we play that out? So I love to think about that, and I love to write about that. And I pray about that. I pray for these people. I really believe that prayer is not just kind of hoping against hope, but
there's also an active part of prayer.
Yeah.
And that's important. And I think sometimes we have to make time. So in thinking of like you tutoring my students when we had that up, that's making time. So it's praying, but it's also tutoring is also sharing your life and your time with that child.
Absolutely.
Having, instead of having a garage sale, having a garage giveaway. So then you're interacting with your neighbors, or so I think those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, well, two things for those like who would be listening. Please don't assume that we have something against the suburbs. Really, that's not what's being said. But rather, what's being said here is that there are people whom we have like uniquely identified, and God has put a burden on our hearts to serve and be present alongside with. And as it relates to needs, the very like open bleeding wounds that happen in the cities is very apparent, and so there's this desire to be present in those spaces. That's not to say that these things don't happen in the suburbs, because there's plenty of isolation from families who might be overprogrammed. So you have a kid who's in baseball, dance class, that's also playing soccer. They're doing this extra tutoring. Meanwhile, they are alone, maybe like have suicidal thoughts or all these different things because they don't actually have a present family, even though mom and dad is there. So there's problems, there's issues in other places too. But everybody is called to like work and move and be different places. And so I wanted to say that. And then the second thing is I forgot.
Well, and for me, when I was teaching in Cleveland, I was teaching in my home. I was teaching in my home neighborhood. So that's a totally difference when you are teaching and you're living in your home community and you're teaching in your home community, and you can identify with your students. You know the inner workings. You know what's happening. That's a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
And when they find out, see, they may not necessarily know until they ask you, where do you live? Oh, we didn't know you lived down the way.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Oh, we would have thought that you lived in the suburbs. Or
Yeah.
and then we will have the conversation. So why is it that you would think that I lived in the suburbs?
Yeah.
So that's I just want to share that because that was my family neighborhood. So when I came back to Cleveland, I did teach in a private school in Cleveland, a couple of private schools in Cleveland, but I ended up back at the public district. So.
You know, I think DaQuavion, Marsha, it also gets back to calling and vocation. Some people are called to the suburbs, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that we feel like we're called to the city does not mean we're special in any way. You know, it's just kind of where our interests and our focus has been drawn. But there, you know, I grew up in the suburbs most of my life. I lived overseas also, but my family had problems with alcoholism. You know? And that really, as a teenager, that really devastated me. And I wasn't in the urban city, you know. My dad was an accountant for a large corporation, but so, you know, you got to be careful not to paint pictures in a certain wide brush, because things happen. And because I think I went through what I went through with my family and the alcoholism and different things, that has given me a heart, you know, for kids. Because I know that what's going on the outside is often not an indicator of what's happening on the inside.
Yeah.
And no matter what environment you're in, people, you know, need help. There's people that need help.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of finding where you can best apply your gifts and your calling.
Yeah, that's a really good note, and I hope that people like really hear that and that it just sticks with folks, especially because like in the context of this podcast, a lot of the conversation you're going to hear is from people who live in the city, particularly in the West Boulevard, Denison Triangle, West Town neighborhoods, and any other neighborhood within the city. Like it's focused in Cleveland, and so though the conversations may not like expand all the time to suburbs, it does not mean that we don't care or we don't think there's like blooms there. It's just different blooms and different thorns, and we're not in that context. And as you were talking, both of you were talking, it made me think about that second thing that escaped me, but then came back, was the importance of proximity and place. And I heard you talk about that with working at the school, but also living in the neighborhood and that like unique beauty of having like that closeness. So I'm curious now that like you have like work literally at home. There's a lot of people work from home in different ways, whether that's like on the computer all the time, doing these various things or whatever they do. Working from home is something that's kind of prolificated out of the pandemic, and like almost everybody's doing it. Everybody wants to. What does that look like for you? Like, having a desire for community, being and doing, but like have a home-based station that sometimes for some folks can be their little isolated square. But what does it look like with you, with that desire and heart that I know you have for community?
Well, I'm still able to have community, but I do enjoy being able to go downstairs, walk down some stairs, work in my small space, create. Now, the prayer is that I'm going to grow out of that space. And maybe I won't just need one side of the basement. I'll need both, which I do need now. But I really enjoy being at home, being able to create at home, the comfort of and the familiarity. And I have, created an environment here that is enjoyable and pleasant. So I do enjoy that. I mostly do event floristry. Mm-hmm. So meaning if someone has, a corporate organization has an event, I'll provide the flowers or a wedding or a birthday party. And then sometimes I'll do deliveries like, someone says, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday. Can you make an arrangement? So I like working from home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would I want to have probably my own studio outside of my home? Yes, I would. And prayerfully, the business will grow to the point where I can do that. But I want it so that I'll be able to bring teenagers into that space, mm-hmm. so that there could be more community outreach, so serve different purposes. Yeah. So I'll be able to work on flowers, but I would love to have a common area where I could have teenagers in the space. I can do the social emotional learning and floral design or community type things. And then as far as community is concerned, I definitely know that Brian and I have a strong community. We have people who love us, who we meet together with, who we're having conversations with, who we share meals with. So that's very important to our health and mm-hmm. us just being whole. With so many people who isolate themselves, whether intentionally, and reap the negative aspects of that in terms of maybe feeling a little bit more depressed or disconnected or down. So I'm able to create at home, yes, but I'm able to have community as well. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Yeah, well, I feel like I could talk with you guys mm-hmm. all night, but at some point we have to kind of come towards the end. And so with that in mind, the last question that I'll have for both of you is, what is an encouragement that you might have for someone who is thinking about what does it look like to continue to press into community in their spaces?
I would say the first thing is don't give up. You can be going through, and I have in my life, times of difficulty, and they seem like they're going to be always there. But a couple years later, I look back and it was like, what was I worried about then, or what was I thinking about then? Because life is kind of a long haul. It's not always going to be the way it is right now.
And so you just go to the next stage. Easier said than done, but it's happened so often in my life that I can say it's true. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the life cycle. It may not feel fun while you're going through it, but you just keep going. And I'm telling you, my experience is life keeps getting better. Yeah. The trouble will come, but life keeps getting better. You live a life of honor, keeps getting better.